this evening's talk, I'm looking at the menstrual cycle. Now, it affects 50% of people directly in terms of ladies, and it affects the other 50% of people, men, in terms of being around ladies, being in relationships, marriages, whatever, where the lady is going to experience menstruation, the monthly cycle, either currently, or they did have, or it might be post the other side, as in menopausal, postmenopausal, but it was something that was going on. Now, it is such a fundamental process, and has got so many different effects. It really is worth talking about with a little bit of science and a bit of practical stuff around health and fitness and training, just to kind of manage it in the sense of understanding what's going on, and then some practical ways to negotiate each month, and some things you can do practically to just help the body along with the process. And I will touch a little bit on contraception and how that can affect it, but that's not a great area of my expertise. So through lockdown a couple of years ago, and just really having a little bit more time to talk about things on Facebook Live and things like that, menstruation was a topic I picked up and went with. It's not very widely talked about in terms of health and fitness, and that is probably to a detriment, in that it does affect ladies quite, fundamentally every month to a greater or lesser degree. And it can actually, from being a male personal trainer with kind of either not having any knowledge of it or just glossing over it and not taking it into account, is negligence quite a strong word, but it doesn't take into account the fact that this process is different to what men have going on. Now, on a previous video, on a previous talk about it, I talked about guys and the fact that their main driving hormone is testosterone, and ladies have a low level of testosterone as well, for the same reasons, in terms of muscle building and maintenance, things like that. But men have predominantly a lot more, and optimizing testosterone is fairly simple if you consistently exercise from the time when testosterone is high, late teenage years into early 20s. If your nutrition's fairly good and you are active, particularly with resistance training, you can maintain a good level of testosterone through 30s, 40s and beyond. The key thing is that consistency and keeping going and looking after yourself, fairly well. That'll keep going. And it does mean that when a man decides that I want to lose a little bit of weight, I'm going to focus a bit more on my nutrition, and I'm going to make sure I am as consistent as I can be with my training. They will get quite quick changes because they have more muscle mass generally. They have no ups and downs, peaks and troughs physiologically that ladies will experience with their monthly cycle, and the sense they can go for 8, 10, 12, 16 weeks or longer without a natural up and down physiological processes going on that ladies experience with a monthly cycle. Can be quite frustrating. I've said it before. Hannah, it was just like, all you do is think about being a bit fitter, do some things with your nutrition in the sense of tidy it up a bit, make sure you're active, training consistently well, and changes happen. Whereas for ladies, it can be a lot more complicated in the sense of, theoretically, very, very similar to male physiology and female physiology, apart from this kind of fundamental area around the menstrual cycle and around those hormones that drive that. Now, the two main hormones that drive the menstrual cycle, the monthly cycle, are estrogen and progesterone. Now, men still have a low level of estrogen. It's a necessary hormone, but as long as estrogen is kind of in the right ratio to testosterone and staying fairly low, then it does it's kind of working in the background for men. For ladies, it is peaking and dropping in an opposite fashion to progesterone to do the processes that go with the monthly cycle. So the monthly cycle itself starts on day one, which is the point of menstruation with the period. That's generally when it started. It's around about 28 days. Kind of in a textbook, it's 28 days. It might be a tiny bit shorter, it might be a little bit longer, just individually, and that can change over time, month to month, year to year. For ladies, it might get slightly longer, shorter. You know, in a sense, there's not too much of an explanation for that, other than we're not robots and things don't work exactly on the kind of textbook thing. It's kind of the majority of the time, on average, is 28 days. Day one is the point of menstruation, bleeding, the lining of the womb is coming away because there was not a fertilized egg implanted. Then at that point, we were talking about the hormones. All the hormones are quite low at that point, and then some changes start to go on. So 3, 4, 5 days of bleeding, menstruation, and then estrogen starts to pick up. Now, estrogen is a great hormone. It's not the same, but it's kind of equivalent to testosterone in men. When estrogen is picking up after menstruation, so say kind of day 6, 7, it is giving feelings of well-being, plenty of energy. Physiologically, a lady's body is working nice and optimally at that point. It is a time in a training context, particularly with performance, where you might see kind of like a really good weights, reps, speed, endurance. Everything's working really, really well, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see someone who, a lady who trains at the gym, getting a PB with her weights or something like that, because everything is working really well. Then we get round to kind of 14 days, and that is the point of ovulation. That is when the egg is released from the ovary, and there's a little spike there in another couple of hormones. Follicle stimulating hormone literally stimulates the egg to release, and luteinizing hormone also peaks up, all to do with that process of an egg being released. Now, the act of the egg being released and those other two hormones kicking in brings estrogen right down, and in the second half of the month, kind of day 15 onwards, progesterone then is the one that comes up. Now, progesterone is the one that drives all the processes if after ovulation the egg is fertilized. Now, the progesterone is there to help the egg implant to come down through the oviducts, fallopian tubes. Egg is fertilized. It's helping it come down through the uterus into the womb to implant. If it doesn't implant, if there's not egg isn't fertilized and there's no implantation, then progesterone drops off again, and the line of the womb comes away, and we're back down round to day 1, and a period and menstruation is going on again. In that period there, as progesterone is coming down, is the kind of time when there might be symptoms of PMS. Physiologically, there's a lot going on for a lady internally, so other things are down regulated, and they might be a bit more lethargic, might be feeling a bit more tired. It's when headaches, pains and things are likely to come up, and it's that kind of pre-menstruation symptoms that ladies experience. And at that point, they are not going to be feeling the best, especially in terms of training and performance. A positive factor is because there's such a lot going on physiologically, tissue is going to get broken down and they need to be rebuilt and all that sort of thing. There is actually an increased calorie demand, most of the time, the fact of not feeling great and therefore probably being less active, not training at the same intensity, will kind of balance that out. But that's where cravings can come from. When, you know, if you're really trying to stick to things really, really rigidly, you know, I know I need to be in a calorie deficit for my weight loss goals, but now I'm really, really craving more food, more energy, something sweet, etc., etc. That's because the body is demanding more to do the processes around the period, menstrual cycle, and there's probably potentially no reason not to add a little bit more good stuff with your nutrition to help that process along, rather than succumbing to, I need dairy milk and ice cream. They're definitely a better option, is to kind of stick on the stuff that you know is going to be good and right, and just go up a little bit. You know, most people, if they are sensible, are only going to go up to maintenance calories. So you're not necessarily in a calorie deficit, but you're in maintenance. So if you're at that level, say you add on 300 calories for four days. If you already are in a calorie deficit that's been set up, you're tracking it through MyFitnessPal or whatever, you're only at maintenance. It just means that at that point you are taking in as much fuel as you need. There won't be much change going on in terms of fat used as energy, fat loss, and therefore weight loss, and that's okay. You know, it's better to feel good, feel comfortable, and have energy for the rest of your life, work, kids, whatever that is, than struggling through and then ending up kind of feeling like you end up binging on chocolate or ice cream or whatever, you know, it is, and feeling like you failed. You haven't. You know, an isolated incident of what I would consider to be the wrong stuff because of this is going to be a bump in the road rather than a complete and utter setback. So, you know, if you can manage that, great. If it does go wrong, you know, it happens. Move on back to, you know, calorie deficit and eating well when you can get back to it, or as soon as you can get back to it afterwards. The other factor is, and I've mainly seen this with kind of couples that train together, is, or that kind of not understanding what's going on in terms of performance can be great in those days, the weeks or two after menstruation, and then that drop off that can occur. It can be frustrating if you are trying to encourage your partner as a man. Oh, you did this last week. They might just have the energy in their tank to be able to do it. So understanding that there's going to be a drop off in performance and the amount of kind of total work they can do, you know, it's good to have that in mind to drop it off, because the knock-on effect is probably then, as a lady, if you don't understand that that is going to happen, then it's going to be a little bit of a knock to your self-esteem, like, oh, I could do this last week, why can't I now, you know, do this deadlift that I was doing last week? It feels really, really hard now. I literally can't do it. I could do it last week. The reason behind it is that your hormones are not helping you out at this point. Your physiological processes aren't helping you out. And actually, if you leave it a week or two, and then actually the improvement and progress might be there from the training you've done a little bit further back. One way this can be programmed in is by doing having it in mind cyclically, that you know this time is going to come up. You might not want to, you might not need to stop being active, you might not need to stop training, but you might need to just ease off the number of sets or the expectation that you're going to make incremental progress during that time. So think about it really like 3 weeks where you're trying to train really well and you're going to aim to be maintaining your effort, your weight, you know, whatever you're doing. And then on that 4th week, when things are physiologically are not at their very, very best, then ease back. Be nice to yourself and go, do you know what? I know I'm not going to be great. If I do have some good lifts, times, whatever it is, whichever way you train, then that's a bonus because I'm maintaining. And then after this, when I've had a period, everything's repairing itself, then I know I can go for it again. It's better, stronger physiologically than I am right now. If I give myself 9-10 days, I'm going to be in a much better position internally for external output. Hoping that makes sense. So there are people that will struggle and experience quite severe symptoms. Now, all our hormones, be male or female, can be helped, optimized a little bit through our nutrition. So generally having a good, healthy, nutritious overall way of eating will help. But sometimes we need to give it a little bit of an extra push. Our hormones are transported around our body in fats, essentially, but fatty acids. And if we add certain types of food, that's going to be helpful all the time for a lot of our physiological processes, but certainly around the time of hormones going up and down. So it's quite straightforward in that it's things that you would, if someone said to you, eat some healthy fats, they're probably things that would come to mind. Salmon, steak, avocado, flax seeds, chia seeds, good quality grass-fed butter, coconut oil are all easy ways to increase good fats going into your body to help with your hormonal processes and transportation around the body. It's good to eat oily fish once or twice a week. Avocado, quite high in fat, but fibrous. Other things that you can substitute in, because not all these things are to everyone's taste. You've got broccoli, green vegetables like spinach and things like that, also going to be helpful. And then in terms of actually seasoning, turmeric or actually supplementing with turmeric can be really helpful in terms of just reducing the inflammation effects of what's going on. If you can, and it's something you don't mind manipulating, increasing proteins and fats around your monthly cycle, around the period, will help with repair and with energy. So we're talking kind of in the period leading up to, so in the actual cycle, kind of day 24, day 25, your period's coming. Give your body a little boost with some of these foods and reduce carbs if you can, although you might feel like you're going to eat more carbs because of that energy need that is your body's preparing for and going through. And again, I've talked about turmeric as a supplement as well as an ingredient. Some other kind of supplements you might want to consider: probiotics, so stuff that is for, essentially would be marketed for gut health, like your Yakult and things like that, or your good bacteria, can have a positive effect as well on hormone optimization. Magnesium supplementation is really good for everyone. It can help with your immune system, your sleep, and it helps with your hormones as well. Ashwagandha, a bit more kind of slightly sounding new agey, but really good as well. Evening primrose oil and vitamin D and vitamin B. Now, get outside in the sun if and when we can. Not really the time of year for it. Can help with vitamin D, and we have to supplement sometimes with these things because we're not getting them so well from natural sources anymore due to farming methods and things like that. So they're just some things to consider. Now, beyond that, I'm a personal trainer, a science teacher as well. So I've taught this to different high school ages in different amounts of detail. I've got a degree in biochemistry, but I'm not a doctor, I'm not an endocrinologist. I wouldn't want to be kind of diagnosing and saying, definitely eat this or definitely take this and it will be a really big help. These are some things that could be helpful, and check with if it's going to be something kind of brand new for you to take. My understanding is a bit more limited around contraception and things like that, but different sorts of contraception act on different parts of the hormones and the monthly cycle. So there are some contraception for ladies, which is a combination of estrogen and progesterone, and it's laid out, and actually the amount is dosed and changed through the month to mimic the monthly cycle. That's probably the best in the sense of getting as close as you can to a natural cycle. And I know that it can be taken continuously, but also it can be taken for 21 days, and then because of how it's dosed and how it's organised, then the lady will naturally have a period in that right time slot and go on from there. But I also know there's other methods of contraception which only act with one hormone. Therefore, the body is either going to be always high estrogen, which is not ideal in the sense of it needs to come down for the body to do the other processes, or it might be all progesterone or different things like that. There's contraception that works to prevent implantation. So if you are someone who has been exercising, calorie deficit, eating really well, and nothing changes, it is potentially something to investigate further for advice with your doctor or whoever does you organise your contraception with. It's worth looking into. Beyond that, if there's further issues, there is hormone replacement to start to optimise these things. Now, historically, HRT for ladies got a very bad reputation, and partly due to some studies published or some parts of studies highlighted in the media of HRT having pretty bad side effects and not always being that helpful or successful. Historically, the HRT estrogen was sourced from horses' urine, from female mares' urine, so not necessarily the best source of a hormone. But these days they can make human optimized estrogen and other hormones synthetically in a lab, and it can be administered in such a way that it is optimizing individual people's hormone. It's not just a case of here is this source of estrogen, take some. It's now much more in depth around blood testing, endocrinology, things like that. Another personal trainer, really good, with a high profile, James Smith, actually done a podcast recently with a top HRT endocrinologist. Very, very interesting, and I will link that to the comments here and find a way to put that with this talk, because I think there will be ladies that have experienced different sorts of things around the monthly cycle, going into menopause, things like that, that the information might be really, really useful to start a journey and start a process of actually, maybe you've just accepted that some things are, well, this is how it is, and I'm never going to have my energy back, or never going to have good feelings of well-being and things like that, when actually there is potentially help out there. So it's just about me trying to get information to you, and you can kind of go with it from there. So in summary, monthly cycle, aim is to work with it, understand it, and do what we can to help ourselves, and I mean ladies, with maybe we need to tweak what we eat at certain times of the month. Maybe we need to think about some supplements. Maybe we need to just think, actually, do you know what? This week I'm still going to go and do my classes, go to boot camp, go to the gym, but I'm just going to ease off it. No one needs to know. No one needs to know why. I'm just going to go at 70% rather than pushing myself like I normally would. And be kind to yourself, get through it. You're keeping consistent, you are keeping going, but you are doing it with a knowledge of why you do need to do that, and that you'll come out the other side. And the fact that you've been able to keep going, being consistent, you will get the benefits, the reward of it, in a sense of actually in 9-10 days time I'm going to feel really good. This is when I'm going to push myself again and see what the results are. Also should be said, I think, at this point, that in terms of actual body weight, and when I was talking about the scales a couple of weeks ago, at the time of the month is a big thing in terms of water retention and the body doing other physiological processes. Therefore, it might not show up as fat loss, weight loss around that time, when actually that's still going on, but the body is literally concentrating on doing other things. And it might be in the same way that whatever other factors can affect the scales. It's definitely one that is a factor. I have known lots of ladies that I've worked with who will experience the scales going down for 2 or 3 weeks, jumping back up, and then coming back down, and actually on the sometimes straight away, then on the second time after that little jump up, actually being that little bit lower again. So over time, the overall trend is down, but it's coming down. There's a little bump up, it's coming down a little bit more, a little bit of bump up, coming down a little bit more. And that is why, because the body is concentrating on the other physiological processes it needs to do around menstruation.
Thank you for listening to the Always Moving Forward podcast. You can find more information about MW Fitness at www.mwfitness.net, and all our links to social media are there too.